Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boosts every single day. Rudo and AJ coming at you for the show that we really didn't want to do, but, we have to do it eventually for the people. Just so every time you guys yell at us about goaltenders, we'll just tell you to go watch this show. All right. It won't be a problem anymore. You can just watch this one where we talk about everything. Before we get into the show, shout out to our new sister site, CHGO, over in Chicago. Just launched today. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, low brother getting feisty, bringing vowels to the table.
Yeah, right.
Screwing up our brand already.
It's a mess. It's a mess out here. It's okay. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about a particular goaltender in Chicago in a little bit. But, we
can start there.
You want to start there? We can just start with the... Okay.
I really don't. Don't.
I don't want to start there either. I wanted to start with the Avs because I really think the Avs conversation here should be pretty brief. I think both of us have been certainly vocal about the Avs not trading for Marc-Andre Fleury, but really not for a goaltender at all, at least not a relevant one. Jesse has talked a little bit about the option of the Avs potentially acquiring a third goaltender. AJ, I know you're not really on that same train, though.
No, I think they could look around, right?
Sure.
It's more that I don't know that there's a really obvious option that they would want that's sitting out there. Is there are they really going to pay another asset? They gave a 6th round pick for Johansson last year.
Yep.
To watch him, get lost on waivers.
Yeah.
They paid what, a 5th round pick for Dubnyk last year? So
5th or 4th, yeah, I forget.
Yeah, and now it's okay, are you really gonna throw another pick at a team for Keith Kincaid or Malcolm Subban?
Well, and you're looking at these goaltenders, and first of all, if the Avs lose both Kemper and Francouz, and whoever their third goaltender is their starter, it doesn't matter who it is. They're screwed. There is no third goaltender caliber player in the league that you're going to pick up and feel like you have a chance to go deep in the playoffs with.
Right. Is there anybody in you're looking at Justus Annunen and Hunter Miska and Trent Miner, and you're okay. If the Avs lose both of their guys, they're screwed.
Yep.
So I think that thought is the one that inspires, okay, we'll go get a third guy. Okay, well, are any of the guys that I just mentioned, Keith Kincaid, Malcolm Subban, those types of guys, are any of those guys that I just mentioned, do you feel any differently if they're starting for the Colorado Avalanche in a playoff game?
I genuinely don't know that it would be significantly different than Annunen. Other than you could say they have more North American experience or whatever. But as far as quality of goaltender, I can't tell you that there's a difference.
The one that you might, at least on name recognition, that you might be able to talk somebody into would be a guy like Yaroslav Halak.
Sure. And
then you look and see, he has been terrible this year.
Yep.
And rumor has it that he has every intention of exercising his no movement clause and has no interest in leaving.
And even then, I guess you can say there's a little bit of a track record of that guy getting hot in the playoffs and historically, right. But you're throwing a dart at an entire wall at that point, trying to hit the bullseye. But
and I think that's kind of the point that we're making here is, in the past, when your third goaltender was Hunter Miska, it's I think
there's room for improvement, sure.
Where at least with the other guys that I've mentioned, you're hey, we're not expecting to win a playoff series here, but at least this guy could keep us competitive-ish.
Yeah, not going to get blown out, sure.
And when you were after what happened with Miska, and I hate to I don't want to seem like I'm singling him out. It went historically poorly with him last year.
The reality was they gave him the opportunity to have that role, and it didn't work. So
right, and historically poorly last year. And so it's not, let's be real, it's not like his season this year has been aces or anything.
Yep.
So it would be Onanen would be the guy that we would be talking about as the next guy up, the third goaltender for a playoff series. And at that point, like, at least with him, you're like, hey, we also don't feel like we're winning a playoff series, but this is unbelievable experience for somebody that we think could be our goaltender of the future.
Certainly a little bit of a trial by fire for the kid, if nothing else. Yeah.
Where you're like, look, we don't have any realistic expectation of greatness here, but this could help us down the road if this is where we have to go. So
if nothing else, it's an opportunity for him to show the Avs something. If that and there's a very real chance that the Avs are never in this scenario in the first place, to be clear. If either of Francouz or Kemper are healthy for the playoffs, they are playing, full stop. So
well, and really, like, if you really want that guy, like, you just call up old friend Arizona and see what's up with Scott Ledgewood. You know, that caliber of backup is what I'm talking about here. Like, that's a third guy, but to avoid the Johansson thing.
Yeah.
Any third guy that they pick up, they've got to just carry.
Yep. And it's just not. Again, it's not going to matter. In reality, if you're talking about a third goaltender, it's just not someone who moves the needle for you. It's someone that is at best a bridge to trying to get back to health.
Well, and the other conversations that you would have there, concerns is if he is on the roster, then what position? You know, the Avs are very up against it cap wise.
Yep.
So does that mean that if just in case goaltender? Are you not going out and getting an upgrade on your fourth line or your third line because you're spending the $1 million or whatever
when there are
to
much
carry
more
that
readily visible holes in the lineup?
Yeah, like, and is that guy ever going to get into a game? So even if he does come in for you in the playoffs, he hasn't played in 2 months. Like, what would be the plan? You know, like what's the construction actually look like? And with the Avs out as far ahead as they are, if they maintain that kind of gap, they could easily play a third goaltender for a game or two just to be like, hey, he's gotten into a couple of games. He's not completely rusty, just in case. But again, you're talking about assets. You're talking about cap space. All of these things being allocated to a just in case. And even then, your expectations are not that this guy is going to be up to the standard of getting you through multiple playoff rounds.
And
so it's probably not a situation where it's like, well, if we don't do this, this could cost us a chance at a cup, because you're not expecting Keith Kincaid to lead you to a cup.
Of course not. And
like, if you lose both of your goalies halfway through the Stanley Cup Finals, maybe Keith Kincaid gets you through a couple of games, right?
Yeah. You're hoping that if you're staring down a significant goalie injury and Keith Kincaid is your starter indefinitely, I think expectations are basically zero.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the Michael Hutchinson thing, but as we've seen, people are trying to fire Jared Bednar because of that loss.
Well, and it is what it is, right? Like, any goaltender can get you through one game. Karel Vejmelka had a 42 save win last night.
He's had a couple of those this year.
Yeah.
Which is funny because now it's like people are like, oh, he's actually good. And it's like, he's still not so good.
Adam Werner had a 41 save shutout 2 years ago. So
right.
Any goaltender can win one game on any given night, for sure. Absolutely happens. On the other side of the Avs coin, just so we put a stamp on this show and make sure we've said it, there is very clearly zero reason, assuming two goaltenders are still healthy on deadline day, for the Avs to go out and get a proper goaltender this trade deadline.
Yeah, what about Holtby? And I would just say, what about Holtby? Dallas is Dallas is hanging on to playoff contention by a thread, and
Yeah,
it's in part because of Braden Holtby.
I don't think they have any interest in moving that guy. And even if they
And
did, you're sitting here asking any goaltender you're going to go out and get that would actually play significant games for Colorado. You're asking, are they better than Pavel Francouz?
yeah,
And I can't definitively say yes to that with Holtby, even with the good year that he's had.
yeah, I would say he's probably right in the same realm. And again, like, okay, so you go and get Braden Holtby, and now what?
Yeah, you've got him.
Like,
Cool.
which one of your guys sits for the next 2 months?
I mean,
I
I don't even see how you could make that move without it being Frankie going back if you're Colorado.
Yeah, and then you're in the same situation that you're in now.
Right. You haven't added more depth. You've just switched a guy that you think might be better.
And at a $2 million salary, he's going to be an expensive. That's a lot of money spent on a guy that you are not planning on playing.
Genuinely may not play for you a single game in the playoffs. So hopefully, assuming Kemper stays healthy. And that's the other side of this conversation, twofold on Kemper. One, Kemper's play in the last 2.5 months should have erased any doubt in anyone's mind that he isn't the guy for the Avs this year.
Yeah.
And two, he's a great example of why it's insanely high risk to go get a goaltender at the trade deadline if you're trying to make a playoff push, because we saw Kemper struggle to get settled in with this hockey team for all of October and November, basically.
Yeah.
And you want to do that to a goalie in mid-March and have them try and figure it out through April?
They've got 18 games or so to figure out life,
how to play with that team in front of them. Yeah.
Really tough ask.
So, and I'm not saying it can't happen. It can. It has in the past.
I would ask, has it?
I don't know about a deadline acquisition, but
can you think of a single goaltender acquisition at the deadline?
I mean, how would you qualify something like a Binnington situation where it's not a trade?
That's an internal.
Because there's some sort of system relation there for sure.
Yeah, that was an internal thing, but like a Dwayne Rollison is the example that we have in 2006.
So once this century,
I think that just proves the point right there.
Kind of does.
That you're just not you're not talking about anything.
Yeah,
realistic there. Andrew Hammond's big run that he had, the Hamburglar run, was internal. He was a Binghamton Senator,
and even that
wasn't a deadline thing.
And even that, it turned out Hamburglar wasn't actually that good of a goaltender. He was just on a hot run.
Well, yeah, I mean, Andrew Hammond had a 9.10 in the AHL. In his rookie year in the AHL. In the year that he had the Hamburglar run, he was an .898 save percentage goaltender in the AHL.
So,
and showed up and had a .941 in the NHL in 24 games. Like it was insane. So it's the dumbest thing we've ever seen.
If anything, we're making more of a case for the Avs to just YOLO Annunen.
Exactly, because we've seen that Jordan Binnington would be an internal promotion.
We're seeing Ville Husso kind of do a decent job of it this year.
Yeah, Ville Husso's doing what Jordan Binnington did right now.
Yep.
You do have the Andrew Hammond example. You've seen internal guys come in and just sort of save the day. But in terms of trade deadline,
not great, Bob.
You go and look at actual goaltender acquisitions, even in season that worked out, and it's like Patrick Waugh, end of list.
Yep. And that's a trade that doesn't happen in March. That's in November.
Yeah, that happened a month into the season.
Yeah. So
and also involved the greatest goalie
ever. All you have to do is go out and get the best goalie ever, and it might work. That's all.
Yeah. So all we're really doing is waiting for Andrei Vasilevsky to refuse to play for Tampa Bay.
There you go. The trade target everybody wants. We are brought to you, of course, by Ranch Riders. You can go get their ranch water and other cocktails in a can. They're the
Gail was all about it last night on the
I
watch
know.
list.
He was vibing on that. He was vibing on them. And everybody is down at the bar, though. They're like top 10 selling alcohol in the country. So genuinely, people love them. You can get a bunch of different ones, including the Reposado tequila. I forget what kind of vodka it is, but it's like 6 times distilled. It's super smooth. If you haven't had them, you got to go try them right now. They have a bunch of different flavors, too. I know the one Yahir loves is the jalapeno ranch water one, which it doesn't sound great, but it's surprisingly tasty. Yeah, it adds up for sure. But there's a bunch of them. Everyone loves them. Paloma. There you go. Thank you, Yahir. Appreciate it. They're all good. They all are great drinks, and they are liquor, so they do the job as well. You don't need to be drinking like you need to drink beers all night to get drunk. These will take care of it. You just need a couple. And you're good to go. So hit up Ranch Riders today. Go get those amazing ranch water drinks. Low cal too, apparently. Yahir should be selling this. He knows way more about it than I do at this point. You can also head on over to DraftKings Sportsbook. Use that DNVR code to get amazing odds boosts every single day. Look, we've talked to you about DraftKings a bunch. You know how great they are. You can't go wrong when it comes to DraftKings and betting on literally whatever you want. So get over there, bet your money, whatever you want. I would recommend, bet on people like Cale Makar and Devon Taves, because that's how you make money on the Avs side of things. But of course, you can bet on the Nuggets. You can bet elsewhere. There's all sorts of options. If you want to bet on UFC, DraftKings is an official sports betting partner of the UFC. UFC 272 is running a deal right now where you bet $1 on the main event and get $100 in free bets, no matter what. No matter what. Doesn't matter if you're right, you're wrong. You just bet $1 on it. You get paid $100 in free bets. So jump in with the DNVR code over at DraftKings. Go get $100 of free bets to go bet on whatever you want, from cornhole to darts to hockey. It's all in there. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DNVR on UFC's 272 main event for that $1 for a $100 bet. They're an official sports betting partner of the UFC. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Of course, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. So I think we've pretty well established the Avs aren't really in the market for a goaltender. If they dabble with a third goalie thing, fine, whatever. But it shouldn't have significant impact on their season. There are, I think, at least two and maybe a third team that are teams that are probably seriously looking at their goaltender position as an issue here today in March. One of those is in the Avs division in the Minnesota Wild.
Mm-hmm.
The other two are in the West, in the Pacific, and certainly the Edmonton Oilers. And maybe Vegas. I know Leonard played the other day, but things are still a little bit up in the air there.
Yeah, I would say Vegas is probably off the list until unless something changes. Just because he's now played 2 games. He looks fine. He says he's fine. So I would say until something serious actually does go down there. I would take Vegas out of that contention for now.
Fair enough. Not going to argue it too much when Leonard is playing games.
Yeah, and really, I think the only guys that you're talking about at the deadline that would make sense for a team that's looking for something like Holtby to Minnesota, I could see that, right? Like, that makes sense.
Sure.
But again, you're talking about a guy that hasn't even locked down
a starting job.
Yeah. Holtby to Edmonton, sure. But Dallas is in an interesting spot with Holtby because, especially with Holtby to Edmonton, because those two teams could be competing directly for a wild card spot.
Yep.
And would Dallas really want to just be like, here's your answer. Here's maybe an answer to your biggest problem. go forth into the world and make the postseason. You know, like this with the Stars. Hey, Ken Holland has repeatedly said he doesn't want to give up high assets to do this.
And I mean, that's genuinely probably why Edmonton is in the situation that they're in, is their unwillingness on their end to give up high assets.
It's why they don't have Darcy Kemper in net right now.
Yeah.
Because the Avs were willing to dance with the devil of the goaltender carousel last summer. The Oilers drew their line in the sand and said, no, it's a bridge too far.
And now they're stuck with the goaltending that they have to deal with.
And now they're trying to hope that Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith
can
get it done. Like that's the duo that they're relying on.
Yeah.
To get things done.
So it gets a little bit murky there on Edmonton's end. And, you know, it's always an interesting conversation with Edmonton because you feel like they need to start building around McDavid and Draisaitl and Nuge, if you want to throw him on that list too at some point.
Sure.
But I just don't know how they can continue going forward with the goaltending that they have and be successful, I guess I should say. But
yeah, and like, look, Ken Holland doesn't want to do anything during the season, and he sits on this, right?
Yep.
Marc-Andre Fleury, if you're Marc-Andre Fleury, do you even want to go to Edmonton?
Like, if I am, no, I do not.
His family's entrenched in Chicago. He's comfortable there. He feels like the organization's been good to him. You know, he's not gonna just willy-nilly up and move for a team that's gonna lose in the first round, right?
Yeah.
Is Edmonton good enough in the league's eyes that Marc-Andre Fleury makes the difference?
I would say right now, no, but my question would be, is Minnesota?
Well, and I think with Minnesota, you're in a really weird spot because when you talk about the Wild, you talk about a certain perception of caliber of team that they are, right? Sure. And it's always going to be hard for us on an Avalanche show to talk about Minnesota without
those glasses are tinted a little bit for sure.
Yeah, without a certain inherent bias where we're like, they're fucking the worst. We hate everything about them. Like, you know, like it's hard for us to. I don't want to give Minnesota any credit because it just makes me feel like lighting myself on fire. But I think goaltending, like I've been connecting the Fleury to Minnesota dots for a while because I'm just. They have cap space so that they could just absorb the entire contract.
Yep.
They don't have to do no shenanigans, no dancing around, no nonsense. They can take on the whole thing right now.
Just real quick.
Give it to them.
Have you seen the new banner they're putting up in Minnesota's building?
No.
Here you go. Let me show it to you. It's this puppy right here.
Oh. What a hero.
Why is beer $14?
It's like for real. I want to know.
Put that one up.
Dude, right. I'm sure we wait long enough, somebody will tell us why that's Joe Biden's fault.
Look, you put that one up right next to the number one fans banner, it makes perfect sense. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. You put if they raise why is beer $14, they are the number one fans. They get it. They win.
gotta stand by your principles, I guess.
That's right. Be who you are. No, really, Marc-Andre Fleury to Minnesota makes all the sense in the world, right?
Yep.
They can absorb that money right now. He's an expiring UFA, so he doesn't have to stay there. He can go back to Chicago if he wants, whatever. But it's also a lack of other options. If you're the Wild and you're looking around, Talbot somehow went to an all-star game this year. And Kakinen has outplayed him, but is not consistent enough. And you absolutely do not trust that dude. You're looking around at the market. You're okay. Jonas Korpisalo, Alexander Georgiev are all guys that would be available.
Yep.
Whose teams would want to would be interested in moving them, to be honest. So, and as was mentioned in the chat, you just drafted Jesper Wallstedt, so you don't need to go hard for like a young guy.
Completely body him for sure.
Yeah, you don't need to try and solve the position for 10 years or whatever. But you do want to say, hey, we've got Kirill Kaprizov, and we don't know how long he wants to be a Minnesota Wild, and we've got X number of years to make this happen. We've got a good hockey team. We're getting great years from a number of guys that we probably are not going to get great years from ever again. When Ryan Hartman is making it work as our top line center, like some weird, funky things have gone well to get them to where they are in the standings.
Sometimes you got to shoot your shot when it's your shot.
Exactly. And this is a situation like, look, trading for Marc-Andre Fleury is not going to cost a first-round pick or anything like that. And if it does, then you just tell Chicago to eat it. But
the guy they traded like a 5th round pick for.
They traded literally nothing for Marc-Andre Fleury. They traded the rights to a prospect who Vegas immediately renounced the rights to, and he signed back with Chicago. Literally nothing.
Great.
So, point is, you're talking about, hey, things are going your way this year. You don't know when you're going to have this opportunity again, because you do have the cap hell that is coming over the next 3 years. They're losing just under $13 million in cap space next season, and then just under $15 million in the 2 seasons after that because of the big time buyouts.
Yep.
So they might be so hamstrung that they can't do anything big. They can't give 1-year deals to Alex Goligoski for $5 million. They have to rely on the John Merrills of the world. Like, they have to rely on Jordy Benz of the world, right? Like, they're going to have to rely on $1 million players playing like $4 million players. They can't throw big AAV 1-year deals at guys anymore, is what I'm saying. So. Sure. They've got to, why not go and get aggressive and go after a guy like Fleury right now when you have that chance?
Yep.
Holtby too. Like, Holtby would be similar, where Dallas is like, look, we're not going to catch those guys. If they're willing to they're going to give us the best offer, fine, we'll take that. And then wherever we end up, great, we'll deal with it. Yeah. So I'm interested to see exactly how aggressive Bill Guerin gets, because he's been really patient. He hasn't done a whole lot. His most aggressive move is buying 2 dudes out.
True.
So I'm interested.
Can he actually do addition by addition is the question. So maybe Minnesota Wild leading that race, at least for the trade deadline.
Eriksson Ek isn't going anywhere. He just signed an 8-year deal.
Yeah. I do want to get into some other goaltenders, and this conversation may drift a little bit into more of the offseason and potential free agent conversations. But before that, we are brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. If you're watching the show live, there's a couple hours left. You can still enter to win tickets to tomorrow's Avs game against the Calgary Flames. Go get on your Avs gear, whether it's DNVR merch or an Avs jersey or whatever. Snap a picture for Instagram. Be sure to tag Breck Brew and DNVR in your post, and we will pick a winner to give the tickets to for free to the game against Calgary tomorrow night. So go jump on that one. You got to enter by 3 p.m. Mountain. So if you're watching the show, go snap one of you watching the show right now and get entered in for your chance to win some of those free tickets. We also brought to you by the American Raptors. We got Colton Strickler, the DNVR Rugby podcast, covering all that at DNVR Rugby on Twitter too. Be sure to go follow him. He'll teach you everything you need to know about rugby. And it's kind of the place to be for rugby right now in Colorado, with both the men's and women's 15 teams practicing at Infinity Park in Glendale, the best rugby in the country. You also have the American Raptors, who I believe their season starts up soon here. I'd have to double check, to be honest, but they went 5-5 last year as an experimental team, seeing if pro sports from other athletes can convert to rugby, and it went pretty decently. So in year 2, maybe they can expand on that. If nothing else, you can go see the American Raptors completely for free over at Infinity Park in Glendale. Go check it out. It's a great night on the town. It's an amazing venue where you can just have a blast. Highly recommend, if you've never been, to at least go experience it. So check them out, and go have a good time with sports. It's always a good thing. By the way, little birdie told me there's an Avalanche party bus coming down the line. It's not that soon yet, but everyone has loved them on both the Nuggets and Broncos beats. I know some people have been chatting about them in the Avs circles, so start the hype train up a little bit. Coming down the pipe might be.
Yeah, look, one's happening.
What?
One is happening.
Oh yeah, one is happening. We know for sure. Not for a while though. I'm saying don't expect it next week or anything. But the party bus is coming to the Avs beat, so be sure to be ready for that and have a great time with your DNVR peeps. All right. Third period of DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. AJ, you've talked about Holtby quite a bit. You've talked about Fleury. A couple other names have come by. I wanted to talk to you about a couple of other potentially interesting trade targets of goaltenders. We're going to start with your beloved Isles.
Okay.
Do you think there is any interest, given that the Isles are clearly out of playoff contention this year, to look at moving, honestly, either of their goaltenders in Sorokin or Varlamov, particularly Varley, who only has 1 year left on his deal?
Yeah, Sorokin's not going anywhere.
I didn't think so, but you never hurts to ask. With Varley, he'd be going into the last year of his contract. Next year, maybe not quite the goaltender he used to be of late. Certainly this year hasn't lived up to the hype.
Had a tougher year.
But would there be interest in teams like that? Maybe not at the deadline, but this offseason to give it a 1 year go with him.
I'd be curious. I mean, chat has been talking about Washington needing to do something in net, and I'd be curious if Washington would be that team.
Just to come across and stay in the East, kind of.
Well, and like there, obviously it's been a while, but some familiarity there, and you talk about like Washington is just, there's a dearth of real options. We've talked about Holtby, we've talked about Fleury, Varley, I guess, could be on that list too. Gorgiev, Korpisalo, are any of those guys slam dunk? You absolutely feel comfortable that those guys are going to be better than Vanacek in a playoff run?
No.
Especially at the end of that list with Corpy and
not at all at that point, yeah.
And Gorgiev, where you're just like, no. The answer is no.
Yep.
So, Varley at least is the veteran. He's been there. He's done that. He would probably be refreshed getting out of being Sorokin's clear backup at this point. They're not really even platooning. Sorokin's taken the job.
Yeah.
So I think, he would probably be a little enthused, re-energized being in a cup run again. And you would be hoping that you would get the best out of it. I think Varley and Washington would be an interesting combination. But with Varley signed through a year, through next season, that's it. If he were expiring and it was just for this playoff run, that's okay, cool. It's not.
But having to deal with that additional year.
Yeah, having him next year complicates that entire conversation tenfold.
Agreed.
And I think that's where you're really running into what to do with Varley, is who's out there looking around and saying, okay, well, we want that guy into next year too. Would Minnesota have an interest in that? Would that be where the Wild go?
Maybe Edmonton, if they're looking at that. Koskinen's deal does expire at the end of this year. Yeah,
and maybe they would say, hey, Edmonton would say, hey, we want that, especially if the Islanders would retain a little bit of money on it and pay for Varley's deal next year. Okay, you can sell me on that. There's a team. But you're asking Varley to turn it around.
For sure. You know what you're getting yourself into, and it's probably not anyone's first option.
No. He doesn't get his number retired here.
No, not even close. It wasn't here long enough, didn't accomplish enough for that to be realistic.
Mostly didn't accomplish enough. I mean, he was here for almost a decade. But he wouldn't be Colorado's starter. And no, the answer is no.
Fair enough. I do want to talk about this one, and it's kind of a weird conversation to get into here, and I can't imagine it would happen at this deadline. but it's one you have to bring up right now. Anytime you're talking about goalies, look, the Canadians are the worst team in the league. Yes, I understand Carey Price is currently in the NHL player assistance program, working through that stuff, but is there a world where Carey Price gets moved out of Montreal?
I don't think so.
No.
I'll say, look, I think that teams would have some level of interest, maybe, if he were to get back on the ice and actually plays well. Because otherwise you're talking about, why are you going to take on 4 more years of that deal at $10.5 million? Hell, even if Montreal retained half.
And
are you taking on 4 more years of that deal of $5 million for a guy that's already 34 years old? No.
And that's the big problem, right? Is he's already 34, and the reality is, the minute he signed that contract, he's never lived up to that contract. He hasn't been the same player since he signed that deal.
Well, and it's what happens when you give long-term deals like that to guys who are going into their 30s, is that they physically start to break down. Injuries one injury turns into 3 injuries. The next thing you know, you're in this situation.
For what it's worth, you do usually see a gentler aging curve in goaltenders.
Yeah, it's true, but sometimes you don't, and like that's. I don't know what to say. Like, they're just sometimes he hits the wall, and that's that. But you also, you look at Carey Price, like, he was unbelievable. He's a huge reason that they made the run that they did in the postseason last year.
Yeah.
So even with his regular season numbers not being very good, he's been amazing in the postseason the last 2 times the Canadians have gone.
Last 3, 4 even, really. He's been his worst postseason performance is like a 19-9 or a 9-19. I guess 12-13 he was a disaster, but since then 5 real solid playoff runs for him.
Yeah, I mean you're talking, these are all dead. We're talking about his worst playoff runs all come a decade ago.
Yeah, right. They're not relevant. 2 quality runs in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and like that I think probably gets a GM, gives them a little bit of a GM stiffy. A guy that elevates his play in the postseason is like, oh yeah, that's what I'm after. Like, that's a GM's ultimate kink. So I do think that there would be $10
million for the next 5 years,
right,
though.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, he would have to get back on the ice, and he would have to show that he's healthy enough that a team could dream on him again. But until that happens, I don't think that Carey Price is a conversation.
So I don't disagree. I do want to look at another potential buy low candidate, though, and go over to the Kraken. I'm looking more at Driedger here for sure. I don't think anyone's looking at that Grubauer contract and feeling very good about it right now.
Yeah, I think everybody's willing to just let Seattle
sit in that soup for sure. Yeah,
like, there's still so much money and so many years left on that deal that you're just kind of like, we'll see how it goes.
And Driedger's numbers are not good this year, for the record. In 16 games, he's got an .891 with over 3 goals against average. So that's bad. But with 2 years left at $3.5 million, if you're a believer that he can be the guy he was in Florida, is there some value there at least?
No, at $3.5 million, you're taking all the risk, and Seattle doesn't have any reason to eat half of that.
Okay,
right, to try and help you feel better about
it. Even at $3.5 million, you think that's a steep price?
Yes.
Okay.
Because you're talking, like, I'd be more interested in taking a chance on Philip Grubauer as a rebound, because you're talking about Driedger had 12 games 3 years ago. All right, where he played really well. And then he had 23 games behind a really good Panthers team where he played well. Got lit up in the postseason, goes to Seattle where he's no longer behind a really good club, and completely falls apart. Like, we're talking like pretty much the same thing could be said for Grubauer, except Grubauer's track record is like 4 times longer.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is the fact that it happened to Grubauer too. Does that not make you look at it and say, maybe there's something stinky in Seattle here, and it's
definitely,
not
but it's not something where I say, hey, I'm willing to spend assets to bail Seattle out of a $3.5 million sunk cost and backup goaltender.
Okay. I'd be a little bit more open to Driedger than that.
At 50% retained, if I'm Edmonton and I'm looking and I'm trying to throw a Hail Mary, that you can talk me into.
Okay.
That is something that I would be a lot more like, whoa, well, we could talk. We could talk about that. But at 3.5, keep in mind, backup goaltender is the most cost-efficient position in the NHL, outside of like fourth line center.
You're not. If you're going out and getting Driedger, my assumption was you're at least giving him a tandem role.
Okay, so now you're talking about trying to be comfortable giving a $3.5 million tandem role where you're a 50-50 split to a guy who's had 30 good games in his NHL career.
I'm not saying it's risk free.
So, and this is where I'm saying like the answer is no. The answer is hell to the no.
All right.
There's a reason that when you remember last year when we were going into free agency and there were people out there who were like Driedger, and it's like, dude, these guys suck people in every single year. These guys who perform well as backups
for a very short stint, sure.
But you don't go and look at the game log where they're playing the dredges of the NHL. Sure. They're playing the bottom feeders. Yeah. They're playing the first nights of back-to-backs. They're playing, they're getting the easy starts for a reason. They're getting the backup job. And you start to dig into it a little bit more, and you're like, okay, this guy did really well as a backup. And right now, I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing that somebody's going to be looking at Pavel Francouz going into free agency and looking right at Frankie with the same eyes that they were looking at Chris Driedger with, going, "Are you my boo?
So
are you the long term? Are you the answer to all my goaltender prowess?" And maybe, but there's a lot of risk trying to turn over your starting goaltender position to Pavel Francouz or a guy like Chris Driedger.
So let me ask you what your comparison is here on Driedger to someone like Georgiev. Because Georgiev has over 100 games played, but his numbers, especially over the last 3 years, aren't particularly good.
Now you're running into a problem of a guy who just hasn't played very well.
So I'm like, which side, if you're Edmonton and your options are Driedger and Georgiev, which one are you leaning toward?
I would say trade cost is a huge part of that.
Okay.
If they were exactly the same price, say a second round pick.
Sure, whatever.
No conditions, no anything else.
Yeah.
I would probably take the chance on Driedger.
Just in hope for the ceiling there, I assume.
Yeah, and hope that for my big problem with Georgiev is that he just has not played well in multiple years.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to feel like, and his track record of success, it's not like it was so high end when he was at his best.
Putting up 918s, 914s.
Right. Like it just was not that level. It was not that high, right?
Sure. Whereas Driedger was a 927 when he played 20 games or whatever it was. Yeah.
Right. And so you're like, okay, he was exceptional.
Yep. So
I would definitely, in that case, if all things were equal, I would definitely take the chance on Driedger.
Okay. Just wanted to see where your risk tolerance was there a little bit. A question from the chat here from Anthony. Does Frankie make more, same, less on his next contract, or does he stay with the Avs?
Depends on what Frankie wants. I've said a million times I would offer him the exact same contract.
Yep. Obviously deals get signed when they get signed, but both sides have talked pretty positively during this season about a future together. So
yeah, and The thing is that, again, I mentioned this because it's a really important part of the conversation, that your backup goaltender is a really important job.
Yeah, totally.
But
it's not that important in the playoffs, though.
True, but the Avs are in a spot where they have spent money, like meaningful money, on their backups for several years now.
Going all the way back to when they first acquired Grubauer.
Right. And part of their ability to do that has been that they have not had to spend big money on a starter.
Yep.
They have kept their starter money lower than normal. And
True.
So they've balanced the cost efficiency of backup goaltending by getting cheaper starters.
Yeah.
And right now they don't have either guy signed.
Yeah.
So you've got to try and sign Darcy Kemper. And right now, hey, Darcy Kemper, we'll see.
I mean, I don't know why. If I'm Darcy Kemper, I don't know why I'm signing until I play out the rest of this year, the way things are going. But.
Totally. And how he does in the postseason, I think, will have a major impact on exactly what like with Grubauer. Like Grubauer,
yeah.
Look, if Grubauer performed in the postseason, I don't think he ever gets to free agency.
Sure.
If he played in the postseason the way that he did during the regular season, I don't think he comes close to free agency, and the Avs just run it back.
If he just gets him through that Vegas series, I think the Avs probably are looking to run it back. But not the world we live in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and he didn't get it done. He got worse as that series went on, which created the apprehension that the Avs said. It created the gap where the Avs just said, look, we're not going to give you the extra $500K per year.
Yep.
We don't want to do that. We're not comfortable with you as a player at that price. And they moved on. And now they've got to try and figure out what's next for them. Darcy Kemper is going to
otherwise, yeah.
Darcy Kemper is going to command big money in free agency. He's going to command a multi-year deal, probably at least 3 years.
Yep.
I would say 3 years would be an extremely generous give from Kemper in that situation.
He's probably looking for 4, 5, 6.
But I think he's probably more in line in that 4 to 6 range, because he's going to be easily the best goaltender on the market.
Yep.
So the goalie carousel is going to revolve around him, which is one reason why I think it's a no-brainer that the Avs are just going to be like, well,
just pay the man.
Yeah. So that's where I think they are. But I and when it comes to Frankie, we'll see. But I would love to keep him. Would love to keep him around. But it'd be really hard to pay him higher end backup price and then pay premium for your starting goalie as well.
Yeah. Nothing's free, right?
Yeah. Not when you have so many. I mean, you've got so many big money decisions at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. There are a couple names we haven't really talked about too much. Beyond that, you have Thomas Greiss. You could get into someone like Peter Mrazek on the Leaf side.
Yeah, and Mrazek and Campbell are both interesting, because Campbell's also a pending UFA, where you're just like, how good is he? I mean, he was so unbelievable to start the year. And then
has very much come back down to earth as of late.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still putting up decent numbers on the year, but he's absolutely one of those guys that you're wondering, who is he really?
Mm-hmm.
Was this just a hot streak or what? But
and then he's one where you want to talk about postseason dictating how that contract goes.
Yeah, it's going to decide everything for that kid.
Definitely. So I think that's a huge factor. I mean, the postseason, it's funny, right? We're talking about this now, but the postseason is going to be such a huge determining factor in how some of these contracts go. The Kemper, Campbell, those guys are going to be the best on the market this year. Even Fleury. Hey, if Fleury goes and steals a cup for Minnesota, he's in line to have a short term, but another high AAV deal.
Yep.
If he doesn't, or if he stays in Chicago. If he stays in Chicago and Darcy Kemper wants Jacob Markstrom's deal and you don't want to give it to him, do you call up Marc-Andre Fleury and just be like, hey, we'll give you a 1-year deal for $5 million?
Come run it back, win another cup.
Like, that's where you're just like, huh, maybe.
The interesting conversation there, and we don't have to get too far into this because it's more of an off-season thing, but that would make the third year in a row where the Avs are running a goalie on a 1-year deal, and you keep going back to the revolving door at a certain point. That
the other part of that conversation is you keep getting guys in contract years who have money to play for.
Also true,
which is the ultimate carrot for players in their contract situations.
Yeah, that's a fair argument to make.
Although with a guy like Fleury, it's different because he doesn't a guy at the end of the road who's only playing for a chip.
That carrot might be retirement for that guy.
Yeah. Right.
But
so that's a different conference. Look, the Avs right now, I think the Avs have easily enough money to do whatever they want to do with that at that position. If they want to find Darcy Kuemper, they can.
Yeah, for sure.
It's mostly just where do they find the deal? Where do they find the right price and the right, are they comfortable giving him $6 million? And are they, he's already 31, so
not getting any younger.
Actually, he's 32 already. I don't know when he's 32 and he turns 33 in 2 months.
So
you really can't give him a 6-year deal.
I mean, even a 4-year deal would take him to 37.
Maybe that's a conversation where you're doing a higher AAV in a shorter term, where you are doing like a
pay the extra money to chop it down a little bit.
Yeah. Instead of him making a 5x5 and making $25 million, he does a 3x7 and makes $21 million.
Yeah,
something like that.
Definitely an interesting look that I'm sure we'll look at more in July. Or June, any case.
Oh, well, yeah. And again, like these conversations, because you remember last year we were just like, sign Grubauer, fine.
Yep.
And then after how the postseason played out, it was like, maybe don't just sign him.
Yeah, think twice now.
So, we've got to see how that plays out. Last year should be a teachable moment for all of us, that trying to hurry up and get these things done in December, January, February.
Jumping the gun can burn you for sure.
Yeah. For a guy like Frankie, I'd love to get it done now. That's an easy one for me. Boom, get him done, get him back in. Have his salary to work around.
Different situations there, though.
Yeah, you guys talk about like John Gibson and stuff. He's not going anywhere. So, but somebody said, "Oh, trade for Bucky." Okay.
You'd have to give Winnipeg the actual world for that guy.
I mean, I hope you're not attached to Bowen Byram.
So,
because that's the conversation. I mean, I would have that conversation. Sure.
Yeah, I think you'd have to have the conversation. Do you pull the trigger? Well, we'll see. But
yeah, but then you're also on the other side of that. You're saying, why would the Jets do that?
Yep. What's the Jets' answer and goal if they're moving Hellebuyck?
Right. Exactly. Okay, well, now you're trying to trade for Bucky. Why aren't you trying to trade for Shesterkin? Exactly. Kevin has it figured out. Why are you going for the guy who's only having a solid season? Just go for the guy that's trying to win the freaking heart.
Okay. We're going to wrap this one up. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. Anytime any of you ask for goalie conversation, now we're just going to point you at this podcast and move along with our lives. It's over. It's done with, at least until free agency comes back around.
Yeah, and look, the goaltender carousel is one of the biggest dominoes every offseason. So it will be revisited when games are done, and we're good.
Yep. But until then, this is it for goalies.
We're free.
We don't have to talk about them ever again. We're done with it. We love all of you. Be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. And we will be back tomorrow with pregame, postgame against Calgary. Y'all know the drill. Free AJ. We are out of here.